NDP leader Jagmeet Singh announcing today that his party will try to defeat the government in Parliament and force an election. Al Sweeney is covering the story for us, joining us live in studio with the latest. Al.
Matt, this chaotic week in federal politics started with Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland suddenly quitting on Monday, leading to widespread calls for Trudeau's resignation. And it's ending in chaos, with the opposition lining up against Trudeau as the Prime Minister appointed a series of new cabinet ministers today who may not be in the job for long. Even before Trudeau had the chance to pose one by one with his new ministers, the NDP announced that it plans to defeat his government in Parliament. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh issued a letter to Canadians. He says Justin Trudeau failed in the biggest job a Prime Minister has, to work for people. And this government's time is up. McMaster political science professor Peter Grafe says the NDP couldn't keep supporting an unpopular government.
I think they were really getting hammered, maybe by their own members, certainly by the broader public.
With the Commons on a winter break, Grafe says the vote to defeat the government could happen sometime after it sits again in late January.
If you had a vote of non-confidence, say on the 1st of February, the Prime Minister would then go and ask for an election. The minimum length of an election is 5 weeks. So we'd be looking into early March then for an election day.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says it's time for the government to go.
People who've lost hope in this country, they are the ones we should be focused on. Instead, we're focusing on the chaotic clown show.
He's going to appeal directly to the Governor General.
I will be writing the Governor General, asking her to urgently reconvene Parliament and require a non-confidence vote so the Prime Minister can judge whether he stays in power, continuing to ruin our country.
That probably won't work.
Mr. Poilievre is grandstanding with this. I mean, he knows that the only person who can ask the Governor General to summon Parliament is a Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister wasn't saying anything publicly today, but he gave new responsibility to cabinet ministers like Oakville MP Anita Anand, now Minister for Transport and Internal Trade.
I've been thinking a lot this week about the events of the week and have chatted with the Prime Minister a number of times. And I believe this is a moment where we need to stand united.
And Trudeau added 8 new members to his cabinet, including former Premier Dalton McGuinty's brother, David, and Toronto backbencher Nathaniel Erskine Smith in the critical role of housing.
I see millions of Canadians who are rightly angry about housing.
This is all happening in the shadow of tariff threats from President-elect Trump. So far, we've heard more from Ontario's Premier on that than the leaders in Ottawa. Ford says he's trying to set up a meeting with Trump.
I just look forward to sitting down with him eye to eye, businessman to businessman, and saying, you know, we need to cut a deal that's going to be beneficial for Americans and Canadians.
Bloc Québécois leader Jean-François Blanchet joined the calls today for an election. And one name that's notable because it didn't come up today is former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney. There have been recent suggestions that he'd be joining the government. He was nowhere to be seen. Matt.
All right, thanks very much, Al. Now, for more on this, I want to bring in former Liberal Member of Parliament Adam Vaughan, who's now a principal at the communications firm Navigator. Adam, with the House on a 6-week holiday, is Poilievre's letter to the Governor General toothless, or could she actually recall Parliament?
It's a stunt. I mean, he pulls these sorts of stunts as often as he comes up with a new 3-word slogan. If Trudeau's a drama teacher, I think Poilievre is a bit of a drama queen sometimes. Harper did the same thing in 2008 when he was a member of that government. In fact, in the cabinet, Harper prorogued Parliament to avoid a confidence motion when Stéphane Dion and Jack Layton tried to put a coalition government together. The Governor General did not lift the proroguing of Parliament, and so it's not going to have any effect here. And Poilievre should know that. If he doesn't know it, well, that tells you about Poilievre.
Do you think Trudeau would prorogue Parliament to avoid a confidence vote?
No, I think that the only way I think Trudeau can do that, I think he's literally painted himself into a corner to the point where he's clinging to the drapes right now. But I think that the only way that he would prorogue Parliament would be if there was a resignation by himself and there was needed to be some time to stage a leadership campaign. But I think he's running out of options, and that's largely himself to blame for that.
What do you make of Jagmeet Singh now saying he'll vote to bring down the government after refusing to say that all week, despite calling on Trudeau to resign?
Well, if I continue with the drama teacher and the drama queen, he's the kid knocking on the door to the drama club. He wants to be included in this conversation. I don't think it's a threat to be taken seriously. We all know that Jagmeet Singh has a price. He just needs to name it, and he can come alongside and support the government. He's done that a couple of times where he's threatened to walk away. The challenge here, though, is that there's very little time left to really orchestrate something of any significance if Jagmeet Singh is serious. And so as a result, it's posturing. He may, in fact, vote to defeat the government, but it's not much more meaningful than that.
I want to show our viewers the latest polling data. We're going to bring in a board showing that while I ask you this question. Bloc leader Yves-Francois Blanchet saying there's no scenario in which Trudeau or a Liberal government with a new leader could survive in the new year. What do you think of those comments?
You know, one of the things I've always liked about the Bloc is that they're pretty frank. Yeah, I think that you know, politics can change in a dime. We've seen that in many different races around the world. But right now, reading those polls, it's this government's on its last legs, and the likelihood of winning an election, doesn't seem to be in the cards. That said, you know, he's made some changes to cabinet today, particularly on the housing file, which would be kind of interesting. Nathan Smith is not necessarily an expert on housing, but he's a very effective communicator. And if he goes toe-to-toe with Poilievre, that's a fight that I'll tune in to watch and grab the popcorn.
Do you think today's cabinet shuffle does anything to improve the government in the eyes of voters?
I think there's a couple of appointments which are interesting. I think McGuinty and Anand in particular. Anand becomes in charge of this country's ports, airports, and also as we try to figure out how to deal with the Trump administration and the threat of tariffs, there are a lot of inter-provincial trade barriers and a lot of inter-provincial tariffs in place. And as you know, as Premier Ford talks about cutting off energy and Alberta says net over our dead body, trying to get the provinces to align and get their trade barriers sort of reduced or brought into better alignment with the United States is going to be tricky. She's got that job. She's a very skilled negotiator. Nobody reads a contract better than she does. She's a law professor and a trade law professor at that, and a procurement professor. So she's in the right spot to help. And McGuinty, while he has not been front and center in Parliament because he's been in charge of the National Security Committee of Parliament that reviews all of the highest level intelligence from CSIS, RCMP, and other intelligence agencies, he's in a very good spot to manage the border and to manage security issues along the border. And I think that McGuinty and Anand, along with LeBlanc now in finance, are going to be a very powerful trio in the Trudeau cabinet to deal with Trump and to try to respond to the issues that Trump has raised.
Last question for you, Adam. We've heard lots of speculation about Mark Carney, the former governor of Bank of Canada governor, joining the Trudeau government. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, it's got about as much like. I mean, we got the answer to that this week. They tried to recruit him, and he basically said no. The idea that he'd join cabinet now is about as likely as Chrystia Freeland inviting Trudeau for Christmas dinner. It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened, and it won't happen. The team that Trudeau is going to govern this last chapter of this Parliament with has been set, and we'll have to see how the cards fall. My guess is the question of whether he continues or not is still weighing on his mind. There's been talk that Mark Miller, a very close friend in cabinet, talked him out of it. But it's snowing in Ottawa, and we all know what happens when Trudeaus take walks in snow. And so maybe after he gets past his birthday on Christmas Day, he'll have a new approach to it. But it certainly feels like the last days of the Trudeau government.
All right, that's former Liberal MP Adam Vaughan. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Have a good night.
Sticking with politics this morning, Ontario Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie sent an open letter to Premier Doug Ford regarding American President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat. Crombie asked Ford to recall the legislature January 10th to strike an all-party committee to discuss Ontario's approach to Trump and to commit to not calling an election before June of 2026. Ford dismissed the letter, saying it's not in the best interest of Ontarians to listen to someone who flip-flops back and forth and who isn't decisive and is disorganized, he says. Ford says he's concentrating on getting a face-to-face meeting with Trump.
I have a lot of pokers in the fire, a lot of people that know him. Talked to a senator, very important senator, yesterday saying, hey, we'll set up a meeting. So I just look forward to sitting down with him eye to eye, businessman to businessman, and saying, you know, we need to cut a deal that's going to be beneficial for Americans and Canadians. And the problem is not Canada, it's China, shipping in cheap parts from China, slapping that made in Mexico sticker on, shipping it up through the U.S. and Canada, costing American Canadian jobs.
Ford says he will increase his attempts to reach out directly to the American people about the harm tariffs could do to the American economy in the new year.